Lauren is in the Honda Accord right behind my truck, with our 2 cats, but I can't get out and see her. The last guy who got out was shot in the legs and then run over by a tank. We set out yesterday from Gainesville, Florida, where Lauren had recently graduated from law school. We were moving to my home state of Maine to start a permanent life together. The drive was beautiful most of the way, and Lauren and I spent a lot of time on speakerphone with each other to comment on it. A couple of times we passed through rain, and once a really wild thunderstorm that lit up the whole sky for miles. Then, about 8 hours ago, we hit a traffic jam on I-95 just outside of Lewiston, Maine. I took a look at the navigation thing on my phone, but it didn't show any red areas of heavy delay. It also had some trouble showing my exact location though, so I lit a cigarette and figured it would just be a few minutes. After about 15 minutes, I called Lauren.
"How's it going back there?"
I asked. In the background, I could hear the cats going nuts.
"Not great,"
said Lauren.
"Do you hear Hanky and Hattie howling? They started up as soon as we stopped. What's going on?"
Must be an accident that just happened. My phone usually gives a heads up if there's planned construction or something. I heard one of the cats hiss while the other one yowled.
"I'm so tired,"
said Lauren. "I know, me too. Let's stop and get something to eat once we're through, yeah?"
"Okay."
"All right, love you. Sorry about the cats."
"Love you,"
said Lauren. I hung up and tried to get something on the radio. I have a base model 2019 Toyota Tundra. It's pretty beaten up, and its CD player had broken years ago. During the entire trip, I had been at the mercy of radio stations, and for the most part, they didn't do much for me other than create a general atmosphere of annoyance. Now though, I couldn't even keep the radio on. What wasn't warbling static was some kind of distorted robotic voice reading off a list of numbers and random words strung together. Across the whole radio band, same thing. I couldn't take it, so I shut it off. I picked my phone back up and went to check Twitter. All I got was that game where you have to jump the dinosaur over cacti faster and faster, and then it gets dark out and the birds come. No internet. Finally, Twitter did half load, so there was some intermittent reception there, barely. After a half hour had passed, I started to get antsy, and so did everyone else. People were sticking their heads out the window to try to see what was going on, but it was no use. The line of cars seemed endless. A few people got out of their vehicles to try to get a better look. I got out too and started walking to Lauren's car. When I was halfway there, a voice cut into the air. It sounded like someone shouting through a bullhorn.
"Return immediately to your vehicles. No one is permitted to be outside. This is your only warning. If you do not heed it, there will be severe consequences."
"What the fuck is going on?"
Some guy shouted in a thick Boston accent. He was standing a few car lengths in front of me. An instant later, he was down on the ground, not moving. I didn't see what happened exactly, but that was enough to make me to hustle back to my truck. I tried calling Lauren again. When she answered, all that I could hear were broken flashes of the cats screaming and Lauren sounding scared and begging to know what was happening. "I don't know," I said, not sure that she could hear it. "Maybe they're searching for a criminal or something. I don't know." Then we were disconnected. A minute later, an ambulance was wailing its way down the right-hand shoulder. It stopped just past my truck, and 2 EMTs jumped out of the back. They closed the doors behind them, but I saw that there was somebody else in there. Somebody dressed in riot gear, holding a big gun. The EMTs dragged the guy with the Boston accent by the arms over to the ambulance. They opened the doors and sort of tossed him in, and then followed behind. I saw the riot gear person again for a second, and then the doors slammed shut, and the ambulance sped off down the shoulder out of sight. Somebody 4 cars ahead of me got the idea to follow the ambulance out of there. I watched as a red Hyundai Sonata with a New Jersey license plate tore into the shoulder lane and sped after the ambulance. I tried calling Lauren to ask her if she thought we should try it too. It was a ballsy move for sure, but she had sounded at the end of her rope stuck in there with our wailing cats, so I thought she might be willing to give it a shot. This time, the call didn't even go through. I was getting ready to try calling again when I heard this loud blast. A puff of smoke blossomed somewhere up ahead, and all of a sudden there were chunks of a car flying through the air. A red car. Very likely a red Hyundai Sonata. As I watched a flaming tire roll to a stop against the highway divider, I decided not to replicate New Jersey's maneuver. I heard the blast of a horn behind me, and looked in the rear view to see that Lauren had her arm out the window, moving her hand around in a circle. Finally, it hit me that she was telling me to roll down my window, so that's what I did.
Can you hear me?
She shouted, "I can!" I could even hear the cats. They sounded really freaked out.
What is happening?
She asked. I don't know, baby. I think we're in some kind of military lockdown, maybe. I think we have to just sit tight here.
Can you throw me a bottle?
Asked Lauren. What?
A bottle, like Gatorade or something. I know that you've probably got 10 of them in your front seat.
It was true. Not 10 exactly, but close enough. I just threw all of my trash on the seat of my truck until it started overflowing, whereas Lauren kept her car clean. What are you going to do with the bottle? I asked.
Not something I want to shout out for the whole world to hear,
said Lauren.
Let's just say we've been here a while and I don't think we're coming to a rest stop soon enough.
Finally, I understood. I reached over and grabbed a bottle. I chucked it out the window, but it was a bad throw and bounced off the hood of Lauren's Honda. I tried again, and this time she caught it. She rolled up her window, and in the rearview mirror I watched her fuss around as she presumably tried to pee into the thing. This was when the fleet of massive trucks started rolling in, on the southbound side of the highway divide. Some of them had cranes sitting on long flat beds, and others had big chunks of some kind of metal material. Soon the southbound side was jammed up with these giant trucks and their haul. Then they started to get to work.
What are they doing?
Asked Lauren. She'd opened her window back up.
Are they building a fucking wall?
That is exactly what it looked like they were doing. One crane would take a massive chunk of material and lift it into place either next to or on top of another chunk. Yes! They're walling us in! I shouted. I checked my phone for the 1,000th time. I had a bar and used it to call 911. A lady answered.
What is the address for this emergency?
I-95 northbound, just before Lewiston, Maine. I forgot the exit number we were coming up on. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What is the emergency?
Well, we're in this weird traffic jam, and people are dying here. Cars are exploding. They're building a wall around us. They're trapping us here. I know that sounds crazy.
There was a long silence on the other end. I thought maybe we'd been disconnected. But then I heard her voice again, crystal clear.
Sir, I am going to need you to remain calm and stay in your vehicle. And if you would, roll down your window. Not the driver's side, the passenger's side.
What?
I asked. Then I heard the tapping at my window. There was a lady cop standing there, holding a cell phone up to her ear. My heart jumped up into my throat, and my instinct was to slam my foot on the gas pedal, but there was nowhere to go. I rolled down the window.
You reported an emergency?
Asked the cop.
Everything looks okay to me. We don't discourage anyone from calling emergency services if they truly think that there might be an emergency situation occurring, but everything appears to be perfectly fine here. I will give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but remember that we also very strongly frown upon fraudulent 911 calls. You could be charged for that, sir. It's no joke.
Oh, I said, trying to hold it together. I'm sorry about that. I did think that something bad was going on, but now I see that everything is okay. Thanks for checking in.
It's no problem at all, sir,
said the cop, smiling.
And remember, stay in your vehicle.
Of course, I said, trying to smile, though I'm sure my face looked like a sweaty pretzel instead. The cop nodded and then walked off down the line of cars. I waited a few minutes and then called out to Lauren.
I think we're fucked, I said. I called 911 and that cop that was just here, she's the one who picked up. She said everything's fine, but it's not.
Fuck,
said Lauren.
what do we do?
That's when the guy jumped out of his car and made a break for the wooded area to the right of the highway. And that's when they shot him in the legs. I heard him cry out and watched him hit the ground. I heard a loud, continuous rumble, interspersed with snaps from the woods. Then I saw the tank. It didn't so much emerge from the woods as it destroyed the woods in its wake. Beyond it, I saw another enormous wall. We were walled in from 2 sides, and my guess was that we were walled in from 4 sides. The tank crushed the man like he was a particularly small ant. They are working on the roof now. It's almost done. Once the roof is on, I have a feeling that I won't get any reception at all. Before that happens, I'm hoping for one more spike so that I can get this out. I don't know if this is on the news or not. I thought it was just a traffic jam, so that's probably how they're playing it off. They probably have rerouted traffic around us by now. I don't know what this is, but there are now dozens of heavily armed people in riot gear going from car to car. Sometimes they drag somebody out and carry them screaming off to what remains of the wooded area, where they disappear from sight. They're almost at my truck now. I hope they skip me. And Lauren. Oh God. I'm going to tell her that I love her. If this reaches you, I don't know what you can do, but please try to help us. I gripped the steering wheel with sweaty hands and stared straight ahead as a person dressed in full riot gear stepped up next to my truck, holding a huge gun. I didn't know what to do, other than sit there frozen.
I'm going to need to see your driver's license, sir. Please don't get smart and try anything or I will shoot you in the head.
I lifted one hand from the steering wheel. There, on the seat next to me, I said. My wallet, okay? The man nodded his helmet.
We don't have all day now. Go ahead and get it,
he said. I fumbled around with one hand until I finally had it. I handed it over and he had a look. He kept looking up at me and then back down at the license. Then he spoke into a radio clipped to his shoulder.
759 reporting in. I have located the gardener. Repeat, I have located the gardener. Confirm that assistance is en route.
What? A strange robotic voice replied.
This is confirmation that assistance is en route. 759.
What is this? I asked the man. What's happening?
We're saving the world, sir,
he said, handing the license back.
You'll understand soon enough. Please do not worry. Everything's going to be okay.
Somehow, I wasn't reassured. Within a minute, 3 more riot gear troopers or whatever were marching toward my truck. Then they were all at the driver's side door.
Please step out of your vehicle and come peacefully with us,
said the guard.
We have been cleared to take a non-violent approach with you, sir. You are very fortunate.
What about my girlfriend? I asked. And our cats? They're in the car behind me. The guard turned his head and took a quick glance at Lauren. I could still hear the cats through the open window, hissing and yowling.
If she's on the list, then she will be joining you shortly,
said 759. No, I said. If we're not together, then I'm not going anywhere. So you better check your list now. The woman nodded to the man who had originally come up to my truck.
Check her out, 759.
She said. Then she turned back to me.
We have been authorized to use a non-violent approach with you, but commanded to bring you with us by whatever means necessary.
I watched in the rearview mirror as this 759 dude looked over Lauren's ID. He spoke into his radio again, and then walked back over.
We have been authorized to bring the gardener and the gatherer together,
he said to the rest of them. The what? And the cats? I asked.
This is 759. The gardener has requested to bring along 2 felines. They are currently secured in crates in the back of the gatherer's vehicle. Permission granted or denied.
I held my breath until I could hear that robotic voice cut through the silence.
Granted.
I would have felt a great relief, except I wasn't sure if that just meant that we were all getting dragged off together to die in the woods. I guess that was better than dying alone, at least, if we were going to die anyway. I stepped out of my truck and walked, with 2 big and heavily armed escorts, over to Lauren's car. She got out, and our captors, or whatever they were, let us hug.
Are you okay?
Lauren asked. Sure, I said, genuinely smiling because I was with her again. Having a completely normal one.
We will carry the felines,
said 759.
I don't know, man. They're not keen on strangers,
said Lauren. 759 opened the back door and took out the 2 carriers. I thought that by then I'd heard it all from those 2. But what now issued forth from those carriers was a sound as though 10 witches were screaming at being burned alive. I thought that my ears were going to start bleeding. He handed the carriers off to 2 of his buddies, and then shouted, above the wild sounds of the cats,
Follow us, please.
I looked at Lauren and wondered if we'd soon be dead. I could tell that she was thinking the same thing, and that the answer was, probably. We walked in a procession, with 759 leading the way, me right behind him, then a riot gear, then Lauren, and finally 2 riot gears, each holding a cat carrier. From somewhere far behind us, I heard a gunshot. I winced and looked up, where the last of the massive metal roof tiles were being dropped into place. There was only a small square of open sky left. We walked silently through a short stretch of woods until we came to a group of people huddled together in a corner, where one metal wall met another. There was another wall surrounding these people, though not one of metal. It was a wall of riot gears, pointing their guns straight into the crowd.
You 2 will go stand with the rest,
said 759.
No matter what, do not move. If you move, you will die, and we would strongly prefer that you didn't.
The cats? Can I have them?
Asked Lauren.
Shortly, if you do as you're told,
said 759. We went and stood where the others were crouched. The area smelled like sweat and piss and shit. People were sobbing and muttering in fear. One woman stood up and made a break for it. She put her head down and started running. I expected the guards to shoot her, but they didn't.
We tried to save her, but we sadly can't save everyone. She's dead now. You'll see,
said 759. And then, I did see. I heard the rumble first, coming from above. I looked up and had half a second to process what a coincidence it was that we were standing under the one square of the roof that wasn't filled in yet. This was followed by another half a second in which it dawned on me that the roof was actually falling down, intact, as one giant sheet of massively heavy metal. It did not take long for it to reach the ground. I stood there holding Lauren, looking around in shock. The roof was now the floor, and had crushed everything, except for those of us who were below that one empty space. In an instant, it had crushed all of the trees, and all of those cars, with the people still in them. Everything. The woman who had run away. They were all dead now. Hundreds of people, flattened to death in the blink of an eye. All of the survivors were silent. The only noises were our two cats, Hanky and Hattie, who had somehow become even more wild. They were clawing at the sides of their carriers, and then the thunder from overhead. I looked up at the now completely open sky and saw the darkest and thickest clouds I have ever seen. Bolts of lightning were shooting constantly from the darkness in every direction. We're in hell, I thought. What is happening? I asked Lauren.
I think the sky just fell,
she said. A bolt of lightning crashed down several feet in front of us. The brightness made me instinctively close my eyes, and I felt an incredible heat. When I dared to open them again, I saw that the spot where the lightning had struck was glowing green. It got brighter and brighter, and then, it's hard to describe. It's like that spot of the floor was suddenly sucked away into nothingness, and in its place was a vast, seemingly endless black hole.
Everybody now, please step into the portal,
said 759. Nobody moved. We were all looking around in shock.
Everything is quite fine. The travel will not harm you. 766, would you please demonstrate?
Said 759. One of the guards nodded and then walked over to the black hole. She turned around and stepped into it backwards, like she was climbing down a ladder. I watched in disbelief as her leg was swallowed up by the darkness. Soon, she was gone altogether.
What happens if we don't?
Somebody asked from behind me.
Then we will shoot you,
said 759, very matter-of-factly.
You all have been selected for this journey, and it's our objective to see you safely through to the other side. But if you refuse, then you no longer serve a purpose, and our actions will reflect that reality.
People started stirring. Those who had been crouching stood up slowly, but nobody was making any movement toward the hole. I squeezed Lauren's hand and then spoke up. I'll go first. 759 nodded.
Excellent, a born leader. That's very good news.
Then he spoke into his radio.
The gardener is incoming.
I turned to Lauren. You come right behind me, okay, baby? I don't think we have a choice. I love you.
I love you,
said Lauren, obviously fighting back tears. I broke away and walked toward the hole. There was just endless darkness there. I bent down and put a finger inside. It didn't feel like anything at all. I pulled my finger out and did like the guard did. I turned backwards and started climbing down the hole. It was very strange, as though the hole itself were very dense, so even though I couldn't feel anything solid under my feet, I could control my movements, and I didn't fall quickly into the darkness like I had feared. I stopped while my head was still in this world, and took one last look at Lauren. My God, she was beautiful. Then I ducked down, and I was on the other side. It was a short drop to the ground, which I wasn't prepared for. After moving through that dense hole, the resistance was suddenly gone, and I panicked as I fell. But it was only a couple of feet, and I recovered quickly. I still have not yet recovered from the strangeness of the world that I landed in. All around me, the ground was made of black rocks. I could occasionally see shocks of red scattered among the rocks. I later found out that these are some kind of plants. Above, the sky was covered in those same dark clouds that I had seen before. Bolts of lightning shot out continuously from them. In the distance, I saw what looked like a single mountain, standing tall. Other than that, the landscape was completely barren. It was mostly those rocks as far as my eye could see. It instilled a sense of hopelessness right away that to a large degree hasn't left me since the moment I've arrived here. There was a greeting party waiting for me. More of those people in their riot gear.
Welcome, Gardner. We've been waiting for you.
Said one. I saw Lauren's shoes starting to emerge from the black hole, which was floating about 10 feet above the ground. What is this place? I asked. Why are you bringing us here? Why are you calling me the gardener?
The professor will explain everything,
said one of the guards. Oh, right, of course. And here I was worried about things. And who is the professor? I asked. Lauren was in up to her waist now.
You'll meet him soon enough. There,
said the guard. He pointed off to the massive mountain. Great. I walked over and got ready to catch Lauren. I didn't want to grab her legs yet and freak her out. Finally, she emerged fully and dropped into my arms. Hi, I said. Not exactly the honeymoon we talked about, but I guess it'll have to do. Off in the distance, we heard something shriek. As soon as everyone was through the hole, including Hanky and Hattie, we set off together for the mountain. At first, we worried about our cats, but it turns out that there was no need. They are strangely calm here and have been walking along with us, outside of their carriers. And they're not alone. I mean, there are other cats here. We will be walking along, and a cat will pass us by from the other direction, just nonchalantly swinging its tail. It's a very bizarre sight in this environment. But the cats and the red plants aren't the only things living here. We found that out on the first day. We were maybe halfway to the mountain when somebody in our group shouted out, "A snake! They're in the rocks!" I looked down, and for a moment it really did look like a snake, until it arose. I saw it in a flash, but I'll never forget it, especially because I've seen many more since. Its body was skinny and scaly like a snake, but it had appendages. Its arms were black bones, as if taken from a human skeleton and then scorched in hellfire. They were the same color as the rocks, which made them blend in when the monster slithered around on the ground to sneak up on us. At the end of those bone arms were long and sharp claws. These now tore into the person who had cried out, slicing her up into a pulpy mess in an instant. I didn't see the head that time, because there really isn't a head. It's more like, where the head should be is just this undulating gas, like when pavement gets really hot. It's like there's something there that you can't quite see. The monster picked up the dead woman and scampered off with her, as our guards fired off dozens of rounds. It was no good. The thing got far enough away and disappeared with the corpse, even though there was nothing to disappear behind. They travel in the ground, crawling through the rocks, and somehow manage to drag their victims down there too.
You have to hit them in the heart. The good news is that they have 3 of them,
said 759. We started with 43 people in our group, not counting the guards. We're down to 20. Not all of the dead have been claimed by monsters. Some have simply dropped from exhaustion. The mountain is steep, and there is not much that we can do to help them. We're given periods of rest, but not long. Instead of water, they give us something that seems to keep us going. It tastes very bitter, almost like drinking straight lime juice, but more metallic. After we drink it, we don't need to eat, or hydrate, or sleep. I have seen a few lucky people doze off for a bit, but most of us are on full alert all of the time. It took a full day for us to reach the foot of the mountain, which is somehow just more black rocks piled on top of each other, and we've been climbing for 3 days now. There is never any change in the sky, no sun, no moon, just dark clouds, constantly spitting out bolts of electricity. The only way that I can mark the passage of time is by looking at my phone, which somehow has full battery life despite being on the verge of dying before we stepped into the hole. I have checked my mysteriously charged phone 1,000,000 times for reception. Most of the time, there is none. In fact, most of the time, there is only a string of numbers running across the screen. But sometimes I do get reception. I've been able to listen to 27 voicemails from worried friends and family, but haven't been able to make any calls. Sometimes I can access certain websites. I don't know why, but I've found that the internet works in a limited way when one of our cats is curled up on my lap, nudging the phone with his or her chin. There is some kind of deal with cats and the hellscape that we find ourselves in now. I wish I could tell you more. I wish I knew more. For now, we're getting ready to march again. Up the mountain to see the professor. It feels like we've been doing this for years, but I know it's only been a few days. We only have a few minutes of rest period left, and I want to spend some time with Lauren. So I'm just going to try to send this out. I hope it gets to you. A part of me wants to grab Lauren and the cats and just start running, but there's nowhere to go. It feels hopeless. At the top of the mountain there was a large hut that appeared to be constructed of black bones. As we approached it, Hanky and Hattie started freaking out, for the first time since we entered this strange and horrible world.
You are to meet with the professor, 4 visitors at a time,
announced the guard, 759. He half lifted his gun and used it to point at a woman who was near the front of the group.
You,
he said. Then he selected 3 more people.
You, and you. You may enter now. You may become enlightened now.
The 4 people looked at each other nervously. They were obviously hesitant to enter that black bone hut, and I didn't blame them. It seemed somehow like death himself was in there, waiting to swallow us up. Hattie let out a particularly mournful yowl as the dark clouds above continued to spit out endless bolts of lightning.
Now,
said 759, lifting his gun fully. As with everything else since this nightmare started, we didn't seem to have much of a choice: follow orders or be murdered. One of the 4 walked up to the hut and pulled back the red curtain that served as its entrance. He stepped in and the others followed. They were in there for a while, maybe an hour. We sat outside waiting for our turn. It was the longest amount of time we had been still since stepping through the black hole. We sat in exhausted silence at first, while Hanky and Hattie hissed and cried. Then we started talking to people, for the first time, really. Lauren turned to the woman sitting next to her on a black rock.
I'm Lauren,
she said.
What's your name?
Amelia,
said the woman in a tired voice.
Why do they keep calling you the Gatherer?
Lauren shrugged.
No idea. What do they call you?
802. I think that means I'm supposed to become one of those guards with the guns. Though why or how or what this place is or what is going on, I have no fucking idea. Like, why are there cats just wandering around here? What are those weird plants? What is this place?
Said Amelia.
I'm as lost as you,
said Lauren.
but I think we're about to find out.
As she said this, the curtain opened, and the 4 people who had gone in stepped out. They had wide smiles plastered across their faces and looked very relaxed. The total opposite of how they looked going in. 759 selected 4 more people, including Amelia, and we sat waiting for our turn. We tried to get some answers out of the people who had already gone in, but they weren't saying much.
Everything's going to be just fine,
was all they'd say.
You'll see.
I tried to get our cats to calm down, so maybe I could take advantage of the wait time to get some internet reception. But they were both backed up against rocks with their tails straight up and their fur on end, baring their claws and swiping at anyone who got near, including me. We made some more small talk with the people around us, but nobody knew anything more than we did. Eventually, we settled back into silence. I sat there with Lauren's head on my lap, waiting. We were so exhausted, but the weird drink they had been giving us wouldn't let us go to sleep. From inside the hut, I heard a scream. Lauren bolted upright, and we all started at the red curtain with wide, terrified eyes. Finally, the curtain opened, but this time, only 3 people stepped out. Like the others who had come out before, they seemed perfectly happy with life. But they were one short of the 4 who had entered. Then it was our turn. 759 pointed to me, then Lauren, then 2 others.
You ready?
Lauren asked. No, but I don't think we have a choice, I said. I went first. I pulled back the curtain and stepped in. I was instantly overwhelmed by uncomprehending terror. The first thing that I noticed, because it was the only thing moving, was one of those horrible creatures of snake and bone with a shimmering ghost head crouched in a corner. It was tearing into a human body, the guy before us who hadn't made it out. A spray of blood and body parts splattered against the bone walls of the hut. Next, my eyes moved to a large machine sitting on a table. It had all sorts of levers attached to it, and was making a constant whirring sound, which could barely be heard above the wet noises of the monster ripping apart the corpse. There were several wires coming from the machine, and I followed them with my eyes. They run up and then over to where 4 people were sitting strapped to chairs. They were sitting motionless, only occasionally blinking wide-open eyes. The wires ran into their heads, and then back out of them. On the floor next to the chairs was a cat carrier. Inside was a cat, apparently sleeping peacefully, with a wire also running into and out of its head. The wires ultimately led to a man sitting cross-legged in another corner of the room. He had shock white hair, was wearing large eyeglasses, and the wires terminated in his head. His eyes were closed. Then he opened them, looked straight at me and said, "And
Hey there, Chief. Been waiting for you."
once we were all inside, the professor began.
15 years ago, I discovered a portal from the new world to this world that you find yourselves in now. And make no mistake, Earth is young. It has only been there for 4.5 billion years, and it will not last much longer. This place, this wonderful place where everything is possible, has been around considerably longer, and will be around for as long as we sustain it and harness its energies. Earth was never really suited for us. We were always destined to destroy it. But this world, it thrives on us. It needs us. And for too long we have neglected it. Even 15 years ago, this world was quite different. It has been dying rapidly. That's why you're here. We are going to save it. And we are going to save all of the people on Earth, or most of them anyway.
The professor let out a chuckle and then continued.
When I first stepped through the portal, the wormhole, I was overwhelmed by this world's energies. I was transformed instantly, and my mission became clear. I had to save everyone and everything that matters. So I went back to the new world to get started. But I wasn't ready. Everything was still too raw. I couldn't control the new energies inside of me, and things didn't go well. I slaughtered some Harvard students, and my body was riddled with bullets when the police found me. But I didn't die. I just came back here. Upon my return here, I knew that I needed to take my time and devise a plan. That is what I have been working on for the past 15 years, and that is where you all come in. But before I tell you what that plan is, and what you'll each be doing, I want to show you why we're doing this.
The professor reached up and pulled one of the wires out of his head. There was a sharp needle attached to the end.
"Stick this in your head,"
he said.
"Each of you. Don't worry, it won't hurt, and will go in easily. And what you'll see next is what this world once was, and will be again with your hard work."
None of us in the room were eager to jam a wire into our heads. But I got motivated when I looked back over to the corner where the snake-bone monster was. It had finished its work, and was now standing up over a puddle of blood and pulp, presumably watching us. "Okay," I said. I walked up to the professor, took the wire, and jammed it into my head. I felt warmth rush over me, and a mounting feeling of deep peace and even deeper joy. Everything was all right. Everything was always going to be all right forever. I looked around. I was in the middle of a green field. Up ahead was a massive waterfall, with a rainbow appearing in its mist. Then I heard them, children laughing in pure delight. I turned around and saw hundreds of people in the field then, all smiling and playing and holding hands. Behind the people was a grove of trees ripe with bright, colorful fruit. Then I was lifting off the ground, like I was flying, getting higher and higher. I felt someone squeeze my hand and looked over to see Lauren. She was smiling in the sunlight, looking drop-dead gorgeous. We kept rising, and I looked down. I could see the whole world. It was full of beautiful landscapes, and somehow I could see the people there too, although they should have looked like specks of dust. They were all so happy. There was no misery there, no poverty, no starvation, no strife, no murder. Everything was good and easy. Everything was provided for. Everyone loved each other. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen or felt. It was perfect in a way that's beyond description. Suddenly, I was standing back in the bone hut, staring at the professor. He had pulled the wire out of my head.
"Pretty good, huh, Chief?"
he asked. Then he pulled the wires out of Lauren and the two others.
"We can have that again,"
said the professor.
"And we can bring everyone from Earth here, so that they are not stuck on a doomed planet. We can make a new home that will last as long as we sustain it."
"How?" I asked.
"You are the gardener,"
said the professor.
"Those red plants you see every now and then, those are what give this world its energies. We need more of them, and you are going to tend to them."
"I've never planted anything in my life," I said. "I don't know anything about it."
"Oh, you're underselling yourself,"
said the professor.
"Your hands, they're glowing green. You can't see that? No, of course not. You're not ready. But you'll know what to do, and you already have plenty of work to do. By my count, there are already 23 human hearts here to plant."
The professor looked over to the corner, where the monster had torn apart the man.
"Oh, my mistake. 24.
Outside, we heard a sudden burst of gunfire.
"Make that 32.
said the professor. I struggled to grasp just what was going on. It was overwhelming. All of it. The plants are human hearts? I asked, torn between horror and amazement.
Now you got it, Chief,
said the professor, smiling.
And the better, more virtuous the person, the more energy that her heart plant will release into the world.
The professor turned to the woman who came in with us.
Your heart glows gold, my dear. That is why you're the judge. You will travel the new world and find the purest hearts for the gardener to plant.
Next, he turned to Lauren.
And you, with the silver tongue, you're a master of persuasion.
Well, he's right about that, I thought, looking down at the pink flowers on the shirt I was wearing, which she had picked out for me.
You are the gatherer. You must also return to the new world and convince these people, the ones whose hearts we need, to gather at certain places, at certain times. Their hearts must enter this world still beating for this to work.
The professor turned to the other man in our group of 4.
And you are the engineer. Your brain flashes with electric energy. You will help me work out some technical issues I've encountered. Our goal is ultimately to be able to control when and where the wormholes open. I achieved that once 15 years ago, but that was when this world had far more energy.
So you didn't cause the wormhole to open up?
Asked the engineer.
The one that brought us here?
No,
said the professor.
I was given advance warning of it, due to energy spikes coming from the new world. That's why I sent my agents in that world to set up the blockade.
But why us?
Asked Lauren.
I know we have glowing body parts or whatever, but how did you know that? How did you know that we'd be there?
The professor shrugged.
I didn't, but once you were there I could detect your energies. I knew your names. I have means of communicating with the new world.
He pointed first to the cat in the crate, and then to the giant whirring machine.
It is powerful, but imperfect. That is one thing that the engineer will help me with. At any rate, once I realized that there would be a mass of people within range of the wormhole, I decided that now would be a good time for serious recruitment.
And the others?
Asked the judge.
The ones who got crushed in their cars?
Some were brought here to be soldiers. Some were brought to be plants. And you all were brought to serve your purposes. But some have no purpose whatsoever. Initially, there will be some unfortunate sacrifices. But once we have this world back to where it was, and once we can control the wormholes, we will bring everybody here. It will be paradise. You've seen it yourselves now. You know it's true.
I've got a question, I said.
What is it, Chief?
What's the deal with the cats here? The professor shrugged.
They've been here forever, for many billions of years. At some point, a few wandered into a natural wormhole, and so now they are in both places, the new world and this one. They are very useful. They are a link between worlds. Now, if there are no more questions, it is almost time to get to work. You've had a long journey, so for the remainder of the day, you will rest. Tomorrow evening, a small wormhole will briefly open, allowing the gatherer and the judge to return to the new world and begin their work. I believe that you will land somewhere in the Midwest USA, though it should become clearer where exactly as we get nearer. The gardener and the engineer will stay here with me and begin their work. That is, assuming that nobody objects to their assigned roles.
I took another look at the puddle in the corner. No, I said. We're good. Once we were outside again, the guards let us past the bodies they had gunned down, and over the peak of the mountain. There on the other side was a large plateau that held an incredible oasis. All around it were the same black rocks and dreary landscape. Then, encircled by a ring of those red heart plants, were lush green fields and sparkling ponds. I could see trees overflowing with fruit. A small break in the clouds allowed the sun to shine through onto that one spot. As soon as we were away from the bone hut, Hanky and Hattie settled back down. We walked as a group to the oasis, where several huts were waiting for us. These ones weren't made of those black bones.
Soon,
said 759, waving his hand in front of him.
The whole world will be like this. All will enjoy it. For now, we will enjoy it ourselves. Go and rest.
As soon as I stepped into the oasis, as though walking through some invisible barrier, I felt a rush of warmth run through my body. It wasn't the pure joy that I had felt before, when I had the wire stuck in my head, but it was a taste of that. I felt completely at peace. Lauren and I found an empty hut and settled in with Hanky and Hattie. It was the first time we were alone together since this started. I was feeling, really horny. I made my move, leaning in for a kiss. Lauren pushed me away.
This is wrong,
she said. Not in the mood? I asked, disappointed. That's okay. We can rest first,
I am in the mood.
said Lauren.
And that's part of what's so wrong about it. I feel so good, but I shouldn't. Not after everything that's happened. Babe, all of those people, crushed like fucking ants in their cars. That one guy fed to the monster. Those people gunned down outside the hut. And now we're supposed to go around collecting fucking human hearts to grow into fucking heart plants? This is wrong. All of this is just so wrong.
I felt a twitch of a bad feeling, trying to fight its way into me. But we can bring everyone here. Eventually, I said.
I'm not so sure about that,
said Lauren.
I'm not so sure the professor is telling us the whole truth. Remember the way Hanky and Hattie were freaking out as soon as we got within 50 feet of him? We should take that as a warning. They know things that we don't.
But we're here now, in this paradise, I said. You can feel it, right? You can see it? We can make the whole world like this, and even better. You saw what I saw there in the professor's hut. You know what it would be like.
Even if it is true,
said Lauren.
How many people do we have to kill to make it happen? Good people too. The more virtuous, the better, the professor said. How many heart plants will it take? He never said. 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, all of the time? And how many will get to enjoy this new world, if that's really what will happen? It's wrong. All around. This isn't how things are supposed to be. I know that you can feel it.
I could. It's what I had been feeling all along, until I stepped into the oasis, when that voice inside me died, and the warmth replaced it. I concentrated. Okay, I said. What do we do? If we don't follow orders, the professor will have us killed, one way or another, and they'll go on without us anyway. Lauren reached down and gave Hattie a scratch under her chin.
Then, we'll have to kill the professor,
she said. I see zero chance of it happening, and I'm scared as hell about it. But I know we have to try. And I feel like we only have until tomorrow, when the wormhole opens, and Lauren is supposed to go through while I stay here. God, I'm scared. When I was a kid, I watched my best friend die. There was a stream in the middle of the woods behind my house. It marked my parents' property line. Then, on the other side of the stream was an old treehouse. I don't know who put it there, but I never saw anybody else come near it, so Silas and I claimed it as our own. It was in rough shape when we found it, but it had good bones, and over the years we patched in the rotten parts with bits of wood from Dad's workshop. Each summer, Silas would come over nearly every day, and we'd go to that treehouse. We had all sorts of forbidden things there, stashed in an airtight plastic bin. A pint of whiskey, a pack of smokes, a few of Dad's old Playboys, things like that. We'd work on repairing the treehouse, taking breaks now and then to look through the artifacts from the strange alien world of adults and make up stories. One year when we were 12, we got a late start. I went on a 2-week vacation with my family right after school was over, and by the time I got back, spring was in full bloom. By the time we finally got to work, the path back to the treehouse was overgrown, and we had to spend a couple of days clearing it with old, dull Army-Navy store machetes. When we did make it back, we saw that there were a few new spots of rot, but otherwise, she looked in good shape. We decided that we'd make the repairs later, because we were eager to make up for lost time. We wanted to get back to the enclosure of the treehouse. Our world. I started climbing the ladder.
Careful,
said Silas from below.
That next step looks rotten.
I saw that he was right, so I skipped that step and finally made it to the top. I unlatched the door, pushed it open, and stepped inside, feeling that thrill of having something that nobody else in the world has or even knows about. A minute later, I saw Silas's head appear, and then he was all the way up on the platform, outside the treehouse. He was smiling, and then suddenly, he was screaming, clutching his neck, running inside and slamming the door behind him. He swatted wildly at his neck, his eyes wide with fear, and cried out in pain. "What's wrong?" I shouted.
Something stung me,
he said.
But I think I got it. It just hurts.
Then we heard it through the door, the buzz of an angry swarm of hornets. Oh shit, I said. There's gotta be a nest around here. They sound pissed. What do we do? Silas wiped his eyes dry where a few tears had formed.
They can't get us in here,
he said.
They'll go away after a while. Then we sneak past them, get some spray, and nuke the assholes.
But he was wrong. They could get us in there. I don't know how exactly they got in, but they got in. Before we knew what was happening, We were both covered in hornets. I twisted in pain from dozens of stings, unable to escape, unable to think. I saw Silas stagger back, and then he was up against a rotten section of the wall, and then the wall collapsed, and he was falling down. I ran to the opening that Silas's body had created and jumped. I landed on my feet, a few yards beyond Silas. His head was resting on a rock, with a stream of blood forming, and his neck was bent at an odd angle. He wasn't moving. I had lost some of the hornets in the jump, but still others were crawling on me, jamming their stingers into my flesh. "Silas!" I screamed, but I knew that he was dead. "Come on, man, run!" I ran, in unbelievable pain, through the woods, back to my house, with tears and snot streaming down my face. I kept imagining a swarm of hornets following me, and for many years afterwards, I would have nightmares about them. I would see one slip in through the crack under my bedroom door, then another, and then dozens, hundreds, thousands. The door would swing open, and Silas would be there, dead, but still somehow standing, covered in hornets. Lauren and I are back on planet Earth. We didn't kill the professor. He is still there, in that horrible world, with his minions. And he is pissed, with the fury of 10 billion hornets from hell. We decided to talk to the judge first. We found her sitting under a tree, thoughtfully chewing on a green fruit, the juices dripping down her chin. All around us, people were walking in the sunlight, holding hands. Some of them were still in their riot gear. It was a very strange sight.
Mind if we join you?
Asked Lauren.
Sure,
Said the judge.
have a seat. It's so beautiful here, isn't it?
It was, and I had to keep fighting that feeling of deep peace to stay focused on our mission.
Yes.
Said Lauren, sitting down next to the judge.
Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
Said the judge. Lauren lowered her voice.
Well, you're supposed to be this amazing judge of character. So, what do you think of the professor?
The judge frowned.
What do you think of the professor?
I started to get nervous. On the way over there, we could hear little flashes of conversation from the people walking around the fields. Much of it was Professor this and Professor that, all about how great he was. Like they were brainwashed or under some kind of spell. It seemed dangerous to share our plan with other people. At the same time, I knew we couldn't do it alone. Lauren, I said, maybe we shouldn't.
It's all right.
Said Lauren. Then she turned back to the judge.
What do I think of the professor? I think that at a minimum, he's not telling us the whole truth, and he's probably lying about everything. I don't trust him, at all.
I held my breath as the judge looked around silently for a moment. Then she spoke.
Thank God. I thought I was the only one. My name's Darcy, by the way, and I run a bookstore in Michigan. Or I did anyway. The only thing I've ever judged is a pie contest, so I can tell you I don't know where all this judge stuff is coming from. And another thing I can tell you is that professor guy is a creep. No, he's a monster, killing all those people. Even if what he says is true, there was no need for that elaborate massacre. The guy is sadistic, I know that much.
I let out my breath in relief. Then you're with us? I asked.
With you?
We're going to stop him. We're going to stop the professor and then get out of this place. Darcy laughed.
And what's the plan? The three of us roll in that death hut of his and ask him nicely to stop and let us go?
Well, I admitted, we don't have much of a plan right now. We're going to talk to the engineer next. I'd like to get one of the guards on our side, but I think their brains are too fried. I think maybe they got a special treatment from the professor that we didn't get.
But what matters is that you're with us.
Said Lauren.
That you understand what has to be done.
Darcy nodded.
Good.
Said Lauren, standing up. She pointed across the field to our hut.
We'll gather as many as we can and meet at that hut at midnight. You'll be there?
Darcy nodded again. Then she reached down, picked a fruit off the ground and tossed it to Lauren.
Here,
she said.
Tastes like shit, but I think it's what they make those drinks from. It'll give you energy, keep you alert. You'll need that.
Thanks, I said, and we headed off to find the engineer. We tried several huts before finding him. He swung the curtain open, and there he was, standing completely naked with a huge grin on his face.
Hey,
he said.
The gatherer and the gardener. Come in. You guys want to do a four-way? I got one of those guard chicks in the bathroom taking a shower. I bet she'll be good to go once she comes out. We've already been at it 3 times. This place fucking rules.
Lauren, I said.
It's okay.
She said to me before addressing the engineer.
We need your help.
Sure, what do you need?
What do you think about the professor?
The professor? Shit, that guy's cool. Look, in that other place, the New World or whatever, I was a mechanic, a car mechanic. Wasn't a bad life as far as lives go over there. But listen, I haven't been laid in about a year. Now the pussy is throwing itself at me over here. I'm some kind of big shot, I guess. You guys too. Everybody's talking about how great we all are.
Doesn't it bother you?
Asked Lauren.
All those people that died? All those people we're supposed to kill?
The engineer shrugged.
Sucks to be them. Some guys get all the luck. Looks like this time we're those guys.
Lauren, I said, we should go. Before she could respond, the curtain to the bathroom slid open, and there was a naked woman, dripping wet, standing there. I recognized her. Amelia, now guard 802. She was the one we'd talked to before going in to see the professor.
Whatever you're thinking of doing,
Said Amelia.
don't.
Huh?
Said the engineer.
So you're not into a four-way? I thought for sure you would be.
They're planning something.
Said Amelia.
They're plotting against the professor.
Then she turned to Lauren.
This is your only warning.
We need your help.
Said Lauren.
Whatever he did to you, somewhere deep down, you have to know that it isn't right. Any of it. You're not a killer, Amelia, but that's what he would have you do.
My name is 802.
Said Amelia.
You had better leave now. And if I so much as catch another whiff of this, you'll be dead. I don't care how important you are. No one is more important than the professor.
Think it over.
Said Lauren.
Search your heart. And if you do that and find what I know is there, we'll be meeting at...
Lauren, I said, for fuck's sake, stop.
We'll be meeting at our hut near the fish pond at midnight.
Let's go now, I said.
So, no four-way then?
Asked the engineer. A bit after midnight, Lauren and I sat alone in our hut, with Hanky and Hattie sleeping on the bed. Nobody had showed. Maybe the professor is telling the truth, I said half-heartedly. Maybe this really is for the best. Maybe not for everybody, but for enough people that it's justified. We sat in silence for a minute, then Lauren spoke up, seeming so sad and tired.
We'll have to do it ourselves.
I frowned. How are we going to do that, baby? How are we going to take on the professor and his pet monster and all the guards who are now no doubt watching us like hawks after your little chat back there with Amelia? Sorry. 802? How?
I'll tell you what I'd do,
said a voice from the doorway. I looked up in shock to see the engineer.
I'd blow up that machine thingy that he's got everything hooked up to. Seems like the engine of this whole operation. Name's Jeff, by the way.
You came,
said Lauren, standing up and giving him a hug. Thankfully, he was wearing some clothes now.
And then we put several bullets in his brain,
said a voice from behind Jeff. It was Amelia, and she was in fact holding several guns.
And you,
said Lauren.
You searched your heart.
Sort of,
said Amelia.
Jeff and I were getting some outdoor exercise when we saw it. Those plants. They're not really plants. Or they are. But then they turn into something else. They turn into those monsters. The headless ones with the snake bodies and the black bone arms and legs. That's what the professor is up to. I don't know why, but he's raising an army of those things and it can't be for anything good.
Pretty fucked up shit,
said Jeff.
Gave me the heebie-jeebies. I couldn't even come after I saw it happen. Just sort of dead in the water at that point.
The curtain to the hut slid open one more time.
Sorry I'm late,
said Darcy.
What's the plan?
The room fell silent, except for the snores coming from Hattie, as we thought it over. We do it tomorrow, I said, when Lauren and Darcy are supposed to go through the wormhole. We wait until after the wormhole opens, so we have a way out if it goes sideways. First, we get the professor, shoot him in the head. Then Jeff gets the machine, while the rest of us cover for him. I don't know what it is, but I don't think we want to leave it behind. Then we get the hell out of here. It sounded almost easy when I said it like that. The next evening, we were gathered together again in the professor's bone hut. As before, there was the machine sitting on a table, wired up to 4 people strapped to chairs, and then the cat, and finally the professor. A few guards were in there with us, including 759, who had been with us since the traffic jam, and 802, our woman on the inside. And the monster. The headless snakebone monster was in there as well. I felt the pistol pressed up against my tailbone and prayed that it didn't make a visible bulge.
In a few moments,
began the professor,
the wormhole will appear 3 feet to my right. To clarify, and because I believe in full transparency, I am able to predict where the wormhole will open in this world with 100% accuracy, far in advance. That is why I chose to construct my hut here. I have been planning this for some time. As to where the hole will open on the other side, that is less clear. But I have narrowed it down to somewhere in New Mexico.
I looked over at the engineer. Jeff. He was trying to act casual, leaning against the machine, but he looked obvious to me. Sweat was pouring down his face. The professor went on.
It is imperative that we do this now. The Gatherer and the Judge will make their way to the New World, accompanied by the present guards. I do wish that I had more time to brief you, but the next wormhole will not open for some time, and our work here is urgent. You will learn your roles as you go. There's nothing to it, really, and I know that you'll all catch on in no time.
The first person in the row of chairs began to shake, at first gently, and then more violently.
It is beginning,
said the professor.
Wait,
said Lauren.
I want to say goodbye to my cats first. They're just outside.
That wasn't any secret. We could all hear them wailing away.
The gardener and I have decided that they will stay here, so that at least he can send messages to me.
The professor shrugged.
That's fine, but please hurry. And there's no need to worry about communication, as we have implemented a very sophisticated system. But I agree that the cats will likely feel more at home here.
I'll be right back,
said Lauren. And that was the signal. Or it was supposed to be.
Wait,
said Darcy. I saw Lauren shoot her a panicked look. This wasn't the plan. My heart was up in my throat as I reached behind me for my pistol. The second person in the line of chairs started to shake, as the first person gushed blood from his nose.
They're going to try to kill you, Professor,
said Darcy. She sold us out. At once, the 7 guards in the room raised their guns and pointed them at various people, including me and Lauren. Amelia played along.
Is that so?
Asked the professor, grinning.
Who was planning on killing me?
He looked at me first.
Say it ain't so, Chief.
Darcy opened her mouth to speak. Then there was a bang and a mist of blood sprayed from the side of her head. She dropped to the ground. Then there were 6 guns pointed at Amelia, who had fired the shot.
802,
said the professor, shaking his head.
That's too bad. You would have made a fine soldier. But I may let you live yet. Tell me who else was planning on killing me. The idea is laughable but can't go unpunished.
Just me,
said Amelia.
What you're doing, I've seen it. I've seen what those plants turn into. They turn into them.
She pointed at the monster in the corner.
You lied to me and everyone else.
I had my hand behind my back, on the grip of the gun. I didn't know what to do.
Is that true?
Asked Lauren in an amazingly calm voice.
Is that why you would have me gathering pure hearts for you? To turn them into monsters? Why?
799,
said the professor.
Shoot 802 in the head.
There was a gunshot, and then Amelia was dead.
Have you been lying to us?
Lauren pressed.
All of us. Your soldiers too. Have you told them what you're doing?
The third person in the line of chairs started to shake.
It's not a lie,
said the professor.
If you do as I say, you'll know glories unlike you can possibly imagine, dear.
Do the plants turn into monsters?
Asked Lauren. She was in litigation mode. She had the bastard up on the stand. I just hoped it would work.
They're not monsters, Gatherer. They're beautiful.
But that's what you're doing, right? Raising an army of them? What are you going to do with that army?
The fourth person in the line of chairs started to shake, as the previous 3 bled profusely from their noses. The professor sighed.
I'm going to take over the world,
he said.
We are going to take over the world. Not this miserable world we're in now with its empty parlor tricks. Earth, the real deal. We will rule over it justly for the first time since it came into existence.
I could see the confusion spread over the guards' faces as I gripped my gun tighter. Off a few feet to the professor's right, I saw a pinhole of pure blackness appear in the air. The wormhole was opening.
Is that true, boss?
Asked 759.
That's what the game was this whole time? Raise an army of these things to bring over to the other side?
Yes,
said the professor.
But everything I've told you is true. Once we conquer it, Earth will become a paradise.
The monster in the corner of the hut took a step forward out of the shadows. For the first time, I saw the head clearly. It was the head of Silas, my childhood friend who had broken his neck when he fell from the treehouse. When I saw its face, I felt a terror unlike I had ever known.
Please,
said the monster, walking towards me.
We can be together again. Forever. We can all be together forever. We don't have to die. We can live again and again and again.
I pulled the gun out without thinking, cocked it, and fired it straight into where I guessed the thing's chest would be. The bullet hit. The monster let out a terrible shriek and shriveled up on the ground. That shot set off a blur of events. The guards began shooting, Some at each other, others at the professor, some at me. I felt a sharp and incredible pain in my shoulder, like 10,000 hornets stinging me at once, and I knew that I'd been shot. On impact, I dropped my gun and fell to my knees. The wormhole was getting bigger. Some of the guards were falling down, dead. The professor was shaking as bullet after bullet hit him, but he wasn't dropping. Lauren was rushing towards me and shouting something.
Jeff,
She was saying.
do it now!
My eyelids felt heavy, but I struggled to keep them open. I watched Jeff unload his pistol into the whirring machine, where all of the wires were coming from. Sparks flew through the air, and there was a burst of light as the machine exploded, and then Jeff was flying through the air, on fire.
We have to go now.
Lauren said, pointing at the wormhole. The gunshots were still going off. Guards were coming in from outside, and everyone was shouting. I forced my eyes open with a great effort, and I saw it. The professor dropped to the ground. As soon as he did, the room fell into shocked silence, until we heard the first pop. I looked over and saw that, next to the smoldering machine, the first person in the line of chairs had a spaghetti mess of blood and brains where his head should have been. I actually saw it happen to the second person. Her head popped like a balloon.
Now!
Said Lauren.
The wormhole is starting to close.
I saw that it was in fact starting to get smaller now, as the third head exploded. What about the cats? I asked. We can't leave them here.
God damn it.
Said Lauren.
You're right.
She shoved her gun in my good hand and told me,
Stay here.
Then she ran out of the hut. That's when the professor arose. Black bones began tearing out of his skin, dripping with green slime. Bones grew out of his chest, his arms, his back. The most monstrous one of them all had revealed his true form. He roared as a volley of gunfire tore into him. One by one, he began tearing the guards apart, easily, with long black claws, as if they were junk mail. Soon, they were all dead, and he turned to me.
You really screwed the pooch here, Chief,
he said, smiling with hideous black fangs, dropping a string of green drool.
We could have had it all. Now I'll have to plant your heart myself.
He reached a clawed hand toward my chest, as I fired a few useless rounds into his. Just as I was prepared to die, I saw a flurry of motion and heard some wild sounds over the ringing in my ears. Then I saw what was happening. Hanky and Hattie were attached to the side of the professor's face, tearing away at it, and he was howling in pain.
We have to go,
screamed Lauren back at my side.
The wormhole's almost closed, and outside, there are millions of those monsters out there closing in. We have to go right now.
We can't leave the kiddies, I said.
We have to.
Lauren grabbed me and lifted me to my feet with an amazing strength. She shoved me into the wormhole, and the last thing I saw before going through to the other side was 759 rising to his feet, with his guts hanging out, and charging at the professor. On the other side, I saw Lauren start to emerge, but the hole was closing too fast. She was too big. I grabbed onto her with both arms, though my right arm was in such incredible pain that I don't know how it was still moving. I pulled with all of my strength, and inch by inch, she came through, all the way. I looked up at the rapidly closing hole and started crying. Hanky and Hattie were gone. I'm at a hospital somewhere in New Mexico right now, recovering from my gunshot wound. Lauren is at a nearby hotel. I'm so grateful that we both made it out, but I can't stop thinking about those who didn't, and my nightmares have taken a different shape. I'm back in my childhood room, and there, like before, is a hornet coming in under the door. Then thousands of them. The door swings open, but this time, it's Silas as the snake-bone monster, and behind him is an army of them. Millions upon millions. I feel something behind me, and whip my head around. It's the professor, in his monstrous, unholy form. His black fangs are dripping with green slime.
Hey there, Chief.
It's not wise for me to be posting this. The professor has agents in this world. I don't know how many. I think that we destroyed his main means of communication when we destroyed the machine, but who knows? I was able to post across worlds just by my cat rubbing on my phone. It's not wise for me to be posting this, but I have to,